Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And Bill from Tested and Punished Props Academy.
And we are back in Adam's shop today for another episode of Model Behavior where we'll be building a garage kit. This I've had in my big box of kits to do for a while.
Your box of shame?
No. My box of impulsive purchases for a long time. And it is a small-scale figurine from a garage kit maker called Futuristic Models. We've actually built one of their kits before. A year ago, Kate and I worked on the diving suit kits in which we showed some rub and buff applications, but this one's going to be a little bit more intricate, and it is a moon suit.
Yes,
Very
prototype
exciting.
moon suit.
Yeah, so what they do is they scratch build and mold and cast kits based on mostly historically accurate experimental diving suits and even space suits, some fantasy stuff. But I love that this is a rare occasion where you can find this. You can find like photos from Life magazine of people testing this moon suit, which obviously never made it to the moon in the 60s. So let's open this up and see what these pieces look like.
I'd like to point out that this is a really wonderful package too.
Yeah.
It says who the model was made for, and then everything else was done by Walter. So thanks, Walter.
Yes. I want you to pop this open. Now the photos that I found of this moon suit show a paint finish that's mostly white with a couple color accents, a big number in the center of it, and has a clear plastic part. So really interesting to see how this all comes out. Is that a base?
Yes, it is. It looks like it was 3D printed. I can see some tiny little lines in there. But yeah, the top surface, the moon rock, looks incredible.
That's nice. Okay, so that's an opportunity for one type of finish. It looks like I got in this bag right here some appendages. And
this must be the body. This is so ridiculous.
Oh wow! So you want to show there's some in the casting process. They left a lot of the sprues there.
Yeah. So this would be where the resin was poured in here. Probably, I bet that's just like hot glue down little pieces of styrene or something. Both for the resin to go in and for the air to get out. Often the air to get out part is overlooked, and then you try and cast a part, and the resin won't be able to fill some of the voids because there's air in the way. The good news is if you make a mold and that happens, then you can cut a vent later. Just cut a new vent into the silicone mold. That means you have a little bit more cleanup work to do, but it's much easier to sand off extra bits than to have to go in and fill any bits that are like bubbles or voids.
And I think not a ton of pieces, but they all look really nice. Now, look at this. There's like an accordion style here. So this will be interesting. How do you think this might affect how we paint this? Like all those nooks and crevices, would you have to be extra careful and not putting on too much paint?
So the challenge with details like this, actually, I was painting a ghost trap pedal yesterday, and it's got that lined texture on it.
Yeah.
And what's wacky is that you can hit it with spray paint, and the lower spots, no matter how you try it, the lower spots don't get any paint. And you run the risk of trying again and again to spray more on there and just coating the top part with way too much paint, and none of it getting down in there. We'll see how it goes. We have an ultra fine or fine surface primer, so it's a very small particulate size coming out of here, and that should be okay. It's designed for this type of work.
Yes.
But you want to like hold after you spray it, hold it up, look in the light, and make sure that you got it down in all the crevices.
Also has one clear piece. This is part of the helmet, and it looks a little bit rough. Is there anything we can do to polish this up, buff it out?
Yeah, so this looks like just cast urethane like the rest of the parts. It's just a transparent part. We could see if there's some plastic polish around here, like the stuff you'd use to polish the headlights on your car. Like the mother's, or I can't remember the stuff. But anyway, headlight polish, basically. It's a plastic polish. We can see if we can shine that up, because it's not perfectly transparent right now. And then this extra sprue looks like it needs to come off.
Or it fits, I think, right in there, because it goes that way.
It goes opposite, so that definitely needs to get trimmed off. Yeah.
Okay, so
and then the other concern, once we get this, if we get it nice and shiny, super glue. If you like put on a lot of super glue and you hit it with the accelerator, it can make transparent stuff like this craze where it gets cloudy. It's very apparent in like model kits with acrylic plastic and other bits on there. So we just want to be careful of that. Make sure we don't put a ton of super glue on there and get it all cloudy.
There are instructions here on how everything comes together. But our first step is going to be snipping off all these sprues, doing a little bit of sanding, and then we'll start applying the primer.
Yes, sir.
Let's get to it. This is both a really fun part and a part I dread the most for prepping these garage kits, when you have real tiny pieces that are part of one little gang mold there, that I worry always about snipping too much into the piece and breaking off. So we have to be really careful with that. Thankfully, we got some nice new nippers that are really sharp, so we're gonna be using those for these pieces. And does it look like, yeah, look at these antennae. Yeah, that's gonna be a really delicate process to pop those off. That's all in making the helmet.
Norm's doing some cleanup over there, and I have a piece of wood that I've drilled some holes in, and I also have sticks. These are just like cheap skewers you can get, and then I can drill a hole in my part, and then put the part on my board. This way we can pick them up, we can spray paint them, put them back down, never have to touch it. And because it's a garage kit, there are these connection points that we'll never see. I can just drill a big old hole in that, which is what I'm doing.
Part of the cleanup I always find is wrapping the anatomy of the figure or whatever you're building in your head, so you know what will be shown and what won't be shown. Because I know that this guy, this bottom part, will never be seen because it'll be popping here. So no reason to stand there. And as long as it fits, be efficient.
There you go. This foot has a keyed. Look at that. There's a flat part on it. A keyed thing so that it can only go in one way.
Great. That's good design.
That's fantastic.
I like pebbled surfaces like this, and recently chatted with some model makers who made some bases for their own figures, like otherworldly bases or even undersea base, like just not bases as in facilities, but bases as in display stands. And they made theirs out of clumping together and molding cat litter.
Of course.
Lumpy cat litter to make your display.
Some of these parts, Norm, we should keep on the sprues.
Yes.
These tiny guys, and I think these tiny guys we should keep, and maybe these too. Keep them on the sprues for most of the painting, because if we clip them off of there, we're gonna hit that with an airbrush and it will vanish. It's just gonna be gone. So some of these are good as is. This is a tool of some kind, of hammer.
Yeah, it looks like he has a chisel and he has a moon rock
in his hand. That's good. So the chisel hammer thing, you can see this is a vent, and that's a vent, and then that's the pouring spout. So that when it got poured like this, you weren't going to get air bubbles trapped at the tip of it there.
And that went all the way up.
So those need to get removed carefully. I'm going to use these fancy cutters here.
Do it. They're for plastic only.
Plastic only. This is the fabric shears of the model making world. If you have a pair of fabric shears, or somebody you know has a pair of fabric shears, and you consider using it on anything other than fabric, then you're a bad person. Nothing worse than trying to cut a pair of. You get your nice fabric shears, you go try and cut something with it, and
like paper.
Like paper, or if someone else has been using your fabric shears, and you go to cut fabric with it, and it doesn't cut very well.
Question for you, Bill.
Yeah.
This sprue is over a lip.
Yeah.
And it's pretty bulky. What would you recommend for popping that out?
I would probably use like a grinding bit on a rotary tool to get most of it, and then get a fine grit needle file to do the rest of the cleanup.
Okay.
Yeah. You could do the whole thing with a needle file if you want to be really careful, but I would sand most of that away with a Dremel.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's get one of those. Surfaces.
Hi everybody, I'm Bill, and I'm here to ruin Norm's kit.
I'm not going to be so precious about it.
Yeah, as much of a pain as it is to do that hand finishing work, it's the only way to make sure you don't overdo it.
Come along, Bill.
Yeah, these teeny tiny bits here, we're keeping them on the sprues for most of the painting so that they don't fly away. This piece in particular, really thin, tiny little parts, and it looks like they added a little bit extra on the top there, just so that I'm looking at the picture. I don't see these little parts here, so I can probably trim those off.
Yes.
And then these are vents, I think.
Yes.
So those can go as well.
Yes.
So gone, gone.
Clean up. 3 antennae.
I do.
And already you can see how the main body part's going to come together. You have the head here, rest in the back. You have a lower torso here, and that actually will get covered up by this plate. And then the legs get attached to the bottom of that. So already we get a better sense of like, oh, where we need to marry the edges on the chamfers better.
For these tiny bits here, I'm going to super glue the sprue, which will get cut off later, but I'm just going to super glue it to a stick like that so we can keep doing our thing over here. So just a little bit of glue. Of course, the bottle's plugged. That's how it goes.
Look how nicely Bill laid out these pieces. Yeah. Evenly spaced so you can get all good coverage around.
Yeah, see how they're staggered?
Yeah.
They're not lined up like that so that I can get at this side from this if I'm spraying over here. So, yeah.
Nice tip.
This is, yeah, we do a lot of this sort of stuff. Most recently on a Ghostbusters Ghost Trap. There we go. So that just gets glued on there and set in place. Like that.
All right.
Now I'll just do the rest of them. When I'm feeling lazy, I'll just get a scouring pad and kind of buff a spot a little bit until it kind of blends it a little bit nicer.
Nice.
I mean, what you did was good too.
All right, so before we add primer to these pieces, I'm gonna clean up a little bit with some isopropyl alcohol. This will help remove any residue from sanding and also if there was any mold release used.
It's prime time.
Very nice. He's been waiting to say that all morning. Pieces are ready, and this time we got the proper primer for a project of this scale. Tamiya Fine Surface Primer. In the past, we've used this just off-the-shelf rattle can primer, which works.
It's fine.
It's fine, but not as fine.
No, this is really, really nice.
Stuff.
If you want to, we may still do this. If you want to get better results out of a rattle can, you can put it in a cup of hot water, let the paint warm up a little bit. This is actually kind of chilly. To get a finer spray that way. So if you have this big non-model version of a primer, you can do that and it'll help.
All right. Prime time it is.
Visor. I gotta carefully trim the sprue off of this. So I got it all chucked up in the vise. And it's not gonna take much. So I just want to be really careful. Because if I crack this, it's gonna be a real bad day. Ooh. The sprue is not gonna be kept, so I can put it in the jaws of the vise here. If it gets dinged up, it's no problem. There we go. I can sand that against a flat surface to make it nice and clean, but that should do it. Very exciting.
we're gonna paint this light gray a slightly lighter white. Very exciting. Oh, that's very nice. I mean, the difference is stark. Just breathtaking.
Day 2 of this project. We're back and the paint has dried. Prime time is over as we're back in the tested studios from Adam's Cave to continue work on our moon suit.
Yeah, still lots to do.
Lots to do, but the pieces I think look great so far.
They do, yeah.
We already got a couple bits of color on there. I can't wait to see how this turned out. This is
your mummified pilot.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. This is Jack Nicholson as the Joker.
Yes.
Yes. He's
Mirror.
Mirror. But what's next for us to do before we start assembly?
The paint lines. So there's the reference had an orange line on a couple spots on here and that top piece over there. So we need to mask those off. What is on this? What did I touch? It's sticky. Anyway, we have masking tape that's covered in goo. We're gonna mask off the lines and spray it with some orange rattle can.
Yep.
For that. And then also the visor needs to be polished.
Yes.
So I've got some plastic polishes here, and that's what we'll do next after I clean up this tape.
Alrighty, and I'm gonna unwrap his head to see if this masking worked. A moment of truth. Oh, I think it did. Yeah. Nice. There we go.
Hey, that looks pretty great. And we could go in, we could airbrush him if we want. We can go in with hand paints to just touch up, maybe add color to his hair, his eyes, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But he's probably going to be the last bit to go in.
And that's going to go behind the visor anyway. So as
Yeah.
long as there's enough detail to show that it's a person, yeah. Very cool. All right, to masking.
So we're masking off the spot that we want to stay white.
Yes.
It's always very important to just repeat that out loud to yourself so that you know you're doing the right thing. Because if you mask off the wrong area and you only find out later, well, that's just a real sad day now, isn't it? Because the masking can be very tedious. This shouldn't be too bad. We only have a couple of lines to mask off. I shouldn't say that out loud.
Yeah, there's some nice guidelines for the spots here, and that's all credit to the sculptor, who was very considerate in doing that, and also the simplicity of this original lunar suit design. They are curved surfaces though, so I'm just gonna care about the edge.
Yeah, this, I'm gonna do this part separately, but this connector thing here, the orange goes over that, so I'm gonna do that in a couple pieces, I think. Or actually, here's a good tip. I'm gonna put this tape down as snug to the surface as possible over that whole part.
And then cut it out?
And then cut it out. You know what's what.
Yes, something that, even though I'm not cutting anything out with the masking, I still want to have something like either the back of an X-Acto, straight edge, or just a metal piece so I can just push against all the edges for places where it goes around the corners, because it's very easy to have those corners pop up and then paint would just go right into it. It'd be a sad time for all. As you can see right here, already this side is popped up on this corner. And so I'm just gonna go press that in.
That's ready for paint.
That's ready for paint as well. Now, speaking of masking, something we've done in the past is use our vinyl cutter to cut paint masks. And there is supposed to be a stencil or decal painted on the center of this. Instead of it being a stencil, we actually made a decal. So last night I just cut out some numbers here on the vinyl cutter, and we can choose whatever number we want, 8 or 3, and pop it out, and that will go right in the center here.
Piece of cake.
One of the very last steps.
But now we need to spray orange. Look at that coverage ladies and gentlemen. These are the clear bits. Most of them look pretty clear, but we can tidy them up a bit, especially the main guy here. I've got these plastic polishes. They're designed to go down the line, so you polish with this, then this, then this. But I think I'm gonna start with this one, and if that works, then it works. If not, I'll bump it up to here. So we're essentially sanding, but just with a paper towel and some polishing compound. It really boils down to that when it comes to model making or prop making. Everything ends up being sanding. Hopefully this clears up any of that cloudiness and we'll have a nice clear piece.
That is night and day, Bill.
Pretty good, huh? You can actually see out of there.
Whoa.
Pretty important for when you're on the moon. So this is good to go. We'll install that later once we get into the assembly process. Most of these other bits are pretty clear already. I don't know if I want to mess with them. We will have to trim them, but we can do that right before we glue everything together. I like to keep tiny parts like this on their sprues for as long as possible, because if I cut that thing free, gone. We'll never see it again.
Here.
Yeah.
And between all three of these different grit polishing compounds, you like the one in the middle. That one's just right.
It seems to do, for the scale of work that I do, it seems to do most of the heavy lifting. If you have really deep gouges, this will get rid of those mostly. You may have to do a couple passes with each one. So I did like 2 passes with this and then clean everything off with that.
Would you ever buff it with a rotary tool?
Sure, you can totally do that. You want to be careful. Mechanical tools like that can be a little gung-ho for this tiny kind of work.
It'd shatter.
It could shatter, or the tool could grab it and fling it across the room.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So sometimes, especially with this scale of model work, you got to use your hands.
Inching ever closer. All right, so the painting, initial rattle can paint, we think it's done. Is it time to start some loose assembly?
I think it is.
Here goes our very satisfying demasking moment. You want to go first?
I'll go first. There.
Oh, look at how clean that line is. Yep. Worth it.
Worth it.
Super worth it.
Yeah. All right, your turn, Norm.
All right. Also a lot of tape. Here we go. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Whoop.
Nice.
We have ourselves orange stripes.
Well done, Norm. Well done.
There are a lot of tiny greeblies that need to go on top of the helmet and also underneath the base. So maybe one of each, you can want to take the top and I can take the bottom.
Sure.
For super gluing, a tip.
Yeah, we have very, very small parts here. And to get a little bit of super glue on the very end of it to then stick in this tiny little hole, instead of taking this
Spout.
massive spout and just putting way too much on there, we're going to put some in a container, a small container, so the bottom of this cup. We'll just put a puddle on there, and then we can take these parts and carefully with our tweezers dip them in and put them in place.
That's a pro move.
And I am definitely not going to cut all of these off at once, because as soon as I set them down, they'll run away. So this one, another pro move is to do a dry run and practice what it will be like that. All right, I think I can handle that. So now this goes up like that in the super glue. So we just get a little bit. I don't think I want to put any of the kicker on it. I'm gonna let it do its thing. I don't want the kicker to
the
pool or affect our paint job at all. But I'm not in a hurry, so I'm gonna let that dry.
That was great.
So I'm just gonna pull it out of there, dip it, put it straight back in. So this is the sort of stuff I never knew about when I was a kid making models. And that's why every model I made was just covered in super glue. Just every single joint had like 50% more super glue than it needed. This, you want to be careful, the sprue and the stem that you need to keep look very similar on this. So you want to make sure you don't cut that stem off because you need it to key into the hole there. It wouldn't be like life-shattering if you screwed that up, but it would make it a lot more difficult.
Important to test fit before gluing these things together.
Yes. It's definitely something I never did as a child. It's like that piece goes there, covered in glue, and jam it in. Oh, it doesn't fit. Wait. Oh. Okay. You gonna fit, buddy? Like a glove.
Okay. Let's do a quick test fit of a bunch of stuff we have so far.
Sure.
Before we do some final gluing, just to see where we're at. Stick the main body right here. This interesting torso piece fits under here, and that can be glued in very, very easily. No reason not to do that.
Let me think about it for a second. Yes, we don't have to paint this anymore.
No need to. That's just pants.
I'm gonna drop. Actually, which way are we facing? His crotch must face this way. Okay.
Yes.
That is the front. It would be very embarrassing to put his legs in backwards. Burp.
And then this is keyed, which is nice. So you see that notch right there will fit into that notch right here. And see how well that, oh, it fits. Great.
Oh,
Do I got to pose right? My big fear was the pose for the
It
legs.
looks pretty good to me.
This is also keyed. I'm going to temporarily put this on his base. So far, so good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
You seem skeptical.
So just a little nervous, not necessarily skeptical.
Okay.
We got the two arms, which I've assembled. And I think there's a little bit of option in terms of posability, just because of the key is square.
Okay. Oh yeah, because so you could rotate it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's like he's tossing the moon rock.
yes. Oh, we're so close. All right. Test fitting's on.
Yeah.
Let's start gluing this stuff together.
Okay. This is a fairly critical glue up here, so we want to make sure it's nice and solid. And I definitely want to make sure there's no dust in here because we're going to be capping that off. You already glued the windows in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there will be no access to his pants after this. And I'm hesitating to spray this with the kicker because this stuff can strip the paint. I'm mixing up a little bit of, we don't have a gunmetal in a bottle. We had it in a spray can, but we want to do a little touch-up work on the spots where we cut the sprues off. So I'm mixing black with this silver to get a darker metallic, and we'll use that to touch up those little spots. So that's your gunmetal there for doing your touch-up. And I'm going to paint his hair a brown, which we have right here. And that might be all the paint we do on his face.
Let's give the moon rock a little bit of sparkle.
Yeah, I had a feeling that the bottom of this is where all the pigment is hanging out. The Tamiya's and some colors are more prone to this than others. They'll separate and the pigment's all hiding at the bottom, and you'll shake the can for a minute and it doesn't do anything.
Oh.
You don't realize until you dig in there that there's this sediment at the bottom.
Oof.
Yeah. I'll drop a like a nut or something in there to to shake it up. Yeah. You do want to be careful. I did actually recently crack a bottle and not even realize it. And I think I kept just putting, I didn't think there was a nut in there because it was stuck to the bottom. So I kept adding more. And there were 4 metal nuts in the bottle by the time I was done with it. And there was this giant spiderweb crack on the bottom. And somehow the paint wasn't leaking out everywhere.
Now I'm just doing a dry brush pass on top of this, hitting those high points to give our moon surface a little more definition.
Oh yeah, I get behind that.
Final 3 pieces of assembly.
Yep.
The space pilot.
I'm just gonna double check that he fits still and try not to touch his hair because it's definitely still wet.
Oh, press fit. That's good. I don't think you even need to glue them in.
This is where you want to be careful because if you get too much on this, you're gonna see it. So we want to put just a little bit all around this edge, all careful like on this inner lip here. And you don't necessarily need it like all the way around. Just a couple spots to hold it in place is good.
Yeah.
And there. Looks like it's fitting. Whoop.
We're sealing our pilot in.
I think you got
That's it. I think I got it.
That looks great. One last step, Norm. One last step.
The final step is, of course, his designation. He will be test pilot number 3 or number 8.
Let's just do 3 because it's different than the picture.
That works.
The
for
other
me.
the other picture we saw.
Yes, yes. So this is his vinyl cut. We could have used this as a stencil, but we're going to actually use the number instead. And as opposed to transferring it with transfer tape, we're going to go old school and apply it like a decal.
Yeah, and you can just stick it to the tip of the X-Acto and then use the X-Acto to position it, and then just press it down with your finger.
So this is not as delicate or fine a decal that I will need to use transfer tape, but placement will be important.
Mm-hmm. Good news is, though, is if you goof it up, you can just pull it off and try again. Looks pretty good.
I love doing decals. If you didn't know. There you have it. Wonderful little figurine diorama of a real life test spacesuit. You can Google it, look for moon suit. I think the company was a Grumman, Grumman, that made this. And this is the model kits from Futuristic Models. And thank you, Bill, for showing us some model making tips and for building this with me. Thank you all out there for watching. We'll be back next time with more model behavior. But until then, have a good one.